Hello, everybody, and I hope you're having a blessed day. Look for the second part. I'm going to make a video to the Food Crisis 2020 Devastating Effects. I'm going to make a second part to that video. There's a lot more I wanted to talk about, and I didn't want to make this extra long video, so I'm going to put out a second part to it. But today I want to talk about hiding food. There's a lot of people that feel things would get so bad that we would actually have to hide our food. That, people might take it, steal it, whatever. And I have watched videos I did years ago. I watched tons of videos on, ways to preserve your food, hide it, do different things. And I felt that I really should talk about this. Now, our ancestors had root cellars. Most of them did. Because, well, especially if they lived in an area where there was tornadoes, because root cellars, they could run down into them in a tornado. My grandmother had a root cellar. But they also kept canned goods in there and potatoes and different things that they grew. Now, there's a big thing about burying your food. Now, I can tell you from experience, a friend of mine who, all she did, she has a trailer. She had like 2 trailers, like a double wide. And she took her canned goods and put them in a corner. I think it was in a corner, or just put them in another room on the other side, like where they really didn't go into very much. And she used that room more like for storage. And so she stored a bunch of canned goods in there back in the year 2000. When everybody thought everything was going to fall apart then because the computers were going to go to zero. Well, some short time, because she did use those canned goods as she went along. She used them. And she called me one day. It wasn't too long after 2020 had passed. She was still using her canned goods. And she called me to tell me all her canned goods were bad. And now, you got to remember, these canned goods were not even a year old yet. They hadn't even passed the expiration date. And I said, what do you mean they're old? How do you know? And she said that when she would open a can, it would spew the water straight up in the air. Well, that is a sign that the canned good is not good anymore. And her tomato sauce, the same thing. She lost all of her canned goods. She had to throw them all away. Well, I knew it had to be from heat, temperature fluctuation. Cold, hot, ruins food in cans, whether it be in jars or it's in cans. If you look up storing food, all of them say the same thing when it comes to cans. Keep them in a cool, dark space or room. And preferably, some good air circulation. And root cellars had that sort of thing. They were cooler, darker, and they were built in a way for air circulation. Even the ones that are done today. There's people that are building root cellars out there to store their goods in, which is a great idea if you have the money. But they're, they have the air intake and outtake and moisture control, all kinds of things. And some of them are doing it in a way that they feel actually nobody would even be able to find their root cellar. Well, that's great. But there's a whole lot of us who cannot and do not have the money to build a root cellar. And so, we're kind of stuck for, well, what can we do? And the popular thing out there is just bury it. Well, I'd like to talk about that because, and please don't get angry at me. I'm not saying that I'm a genius, but I just kind of use my common sense and kind of life experience and what I hear or different things. But burying food, to me, could be a very dangerous adventure. Now, granted, it's got a lot to do with where you live. Now, see, let's say you bury it in the ground and you're the kind of person, you put it in buckets. I mean, no big deal. It's in jars, right? Or cans. So it's not really a big deal if you put it in buckets and put a lid on it and you say to yourself, put it in the ground. I mean, it's safe. It's inside something. And you put it in the ground and then it freezes because water freezes. Now, if you're a person that gets 9-10 inches of snow, and how deep do you have to really go before water don't freeze. If you're the kind of person that has a lot of snow in your area, and it's, you have it maybe a month or 2 months at a time, is what I'm saying? And then it freezes. Now, maybe the jars don't break. Maybe they don't. Um, I put mason jars in my freezer all the time, and they don't break when I unthaw them. But once again, you put your green beans, you put your peas in there, and then they freeze, and then spring and summer come, and then they heat up. How hot are they going to get? How hot does it get in your area? I can tell you in my area, it probably would warp my cans if I put them in the ground, because it gets super hot. And once again, how deep do I need to go? How deep do I need to dig to get cool enough? And then could you imagine burying something that deep and then trying to go back and unbury it again if I could? And if I was going to go to all that trouble, I might as well try to figure out a way to build a root cellar. You see, because temperature changes destroys food in cans and jars. It just does. And so I wouldn't risk it. Because I ask, if you're burying your food, well, how much are you going to bury? Are you going to bury a year's supply, 2-year supply, 3-year supply? Because if you feel that you have to actually bury your food, especially canned goods, then you must think things are going to get horrifyingly bad. Horrifyingly. And so if that's true, then you're going to need a whole lot of food. Because I have said, think about it. If you're a family of 4, that is 14 cans, because it takes 2 cans of food to go with a piece of meat. Just to feed a family of 4. 2 cans. That's 14 a day, 28 in 2 weeks. 56 for a month. Now, you're only talking 56 cans of one vegetable for a month. Well, 2 months is 112? Could you imagine trying to bury a year's supply of canned goods? Because to me it seems pointless what are you going to bury it just for a couple months? I don't know, that kind of, to me, just, I don't know, doesn't make sense. I'm assuming that people that are burying food are burying it for long term. So if something happens, they have a year or 2 supply of food buried. I personally do not think it is a good idea. I'm not going to tell anybody, oh, don't you do that? But I wouldn't. I would be too concerned that it might kill my family. Or I open something up and I know, because I know the reaction of certain foods when it's spoiled, and sometimes certain pathogens give no clue at all. And so I kill all my family from something I buried in the ground. I just wouldn't risk it. Hot to cold, hot to cold, hot to cold can cause some serious trouble with canned goods. It just can. You ever stuck a can in a car and for a week in the sun, hot? It becomes hot to the touch, and real hot to the touch. I've done it before and threw the can away because I was too concerned that it was spoiled on the inside. Lots of people do a lot of things, but that doesn't mean that you should do it. Think. Now, beans and rice, that's a different story. They're a dry good, and that, if you put it in buckets in the ground, I don't foresee any problem. It's a dry good. I know a man, and this is the reason I said I don't really trust putting canned goods, because he used to cook his beans in the ground. No fire, no nothing. He'd put beans in the ground, cover them, and come back in a few hours and they'd be cooked. Now, that's pretty hot to be able to cook beans within, a few hours in the ground. So, I know that it has a lot to do with where you live. Some places may have what I call fair weather, nice summers that aren't super hot or not hot, really. And then, winters that maybe are mild. I don't know of any place like that, but maybe there is places like that. But I wouldn't risk it. I just wouldn't. I would do the best I could to store what I can to get me by. I would store just enough to get me by until I could figure out something else that I can do. I've said in another video that my fallback food would be beans and rice. And that would be it. And that, yes, if you wanted to bury buckets and buckets and buckets of beans and rice, it's not a problem. They're dry goods. But canned goods, I wouldn't risk it, folks. I just wouldn't. That's the best thing I can say. I'm not trying to, I'm not some expert on everything. But we all know that canned goods cannot fare well under temperature changes, drastic temperature changes, and burying them in the ground is drastic temperature changes. Well, I hope you found this informative. Don't want to offend anybody, but I felt I needed to talk about it. And God bless and have a blessed day.